Hey, buddy, it's your old pal Scott, and this is Let's Talk Tabletop. Today, I wanted to discuss a topic that most new players of Warhammer don't realize, and it's the fact that Warhammer is only temporary. Let's dig into it. So, you've started playing Warhammer, and you're all excited about it. You're getting into the lore, maybe. You're reading, you're learning to paint and assemble, and you've got new friends now, maybe a gaming club, things like that. And you feel like Warhammer is forever. You feel like Warhammer is going to be your end all be all game. You love it. It's got a huge community, blah, 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 right? The miniatures are top of the line. Maybe not the best now, but very, very premium. But, you ignore some of the things, just like a new relationship where you really don't like the price, but you're kind of willing to pay it anyway because you like the game so much. And, you haven't spent thousands of dollars on it yet. So you're kind of like, whatever. And then there's new FAQs that drop, and you're kind of excited and engaged because you've got a new codex and a new rule set and the new FAQs and the new this and that constantly, points adjustments, and oh my gosh, now that changes my list. This went up by 25 points and this went down by 50. What can I do now? Or any of those things. A supplement comes out or a campaign book and it gives you some new faction abilities or whatever. Maybe they come out with new models or units and you're super excited about that. But just like everything, over the course of time, most people will start to lose interest in Warhammer. Now, that's not everybody. If you're into Warhammer, you may have been a Warhammer player for 20, 30, 40 years. I don't know how long you may have been playing. So it may not apply to you. Some people will play the same army for 25 years and be perfectly happy. But for a large portion of the people that start playing Warhammer, they eventually start wearing thin with the constant changes and the constant new additions and the constant price hikes and the constant point changes and the constant FAQs and the new seasons for tournaments, and all of that eventually wears on you. And it's something that I didn't realize at first, and it's something that I think a lot of people don't realize when they get into Warhammer, is that Warhammer is basically the gateway to wargaming. And as much as people love to hate on Warhammer, it has brought a ton of people. The majority of people that play war games now were brought into the hobby because of Warhammer. So we have to give them credit for that. It's the most visible. It's arguably the most accessible, except the price is prohibitive. But it has brought in the majority of everybody that plays wargaming now. Whether you play Flames of War or Bolt Action or Kings of War or Warpath or Malifaux or anything, you probably got your start with Warhammer. But it's interesting that nothing usually lasts. The laws of entropy and whatnot. Hey friends, if you're in the market for a skirmish war game where you can bring any miniatures from any game, sci-fi or fantasy, and make them clash, check out my game, Brutality Skirmish Wargame. Or for fleet and space battles, that's Brutal Space. Or for mechs and kaijus and superheroes, check out Brutal Epic. You can find it all at brutalityskirmishwargame.com. So, what you end up doing is you end up getting annoyed by some of the minor things in Warhammer, such as the price. You can no longer overlook that anymore because you've spent so much money on it already and they just want more of your money. Or this is your third or fourth edition, and now they're coming out with a new edition. And you're like, oh dear God, why don't you keep the rules the same for a little while, right? So it does wear on you. And eventually you can no longer overlook the things that were outshined by the new models and the constant change and the learning your army and your new friends and your new game group. And that's when you start looking to other games and you start realizing that you have particular preferences in your games, and Warhammer may not fit those. So you might say, I really love Warhammer, I really love mass battle games, but I don't like the I activate my entire army, then you activate the entire army mechanic. I would much rather do an I go, you go sort of thing. And then you go seek out a game that does that. Or you might say, I really like Warhammer, but I'd rather it be small scale. So you might end up going to another Games Workshop game called Kill Team, or maybe Warcry or something like that. Or you might go over to Malifaux, or you might go to Brutality, or you might go to any of these skirmish games, right? Infinity, or Frostgrave, or any of these games that are small scale. And other people decide that, you know what, I love Warhammer, but I want to do my own thing. I get sick of um, having to always play the way they tell me to play. And then you get into model agnostic games, or you get a 3D printer, and then no longer are you shackled by buying Games Workshop merchandise, but now you've got the entire world as your oyster, and you can build whatever army you feel like it. So there's a lot of things. It's partially the whole principle behind relationships, right? Where you're first in love with the person that you're dating and they can do no wrong, et cetera, et cetera. But then eventually the honeymoon phase wears off. It might take weeks, months, years. And you're like, you know what? These problems are actually starting to annoy me now. These things that were at first not so bad because I was so in love. And then you actually learn something about yourself as a romantic person or as a gamer, and you realize, you know what, I have certain preferences and I would rather pursue those preferences rather than be shackled down with the same old game or maybe the same old partner. So it's interesting. A little bit of it is the relationship theory. A little bit of it is you understanding yourself better and knowing what's out there. You know, when you first encountered Warhammer, you didn't know wargaming existed. You walked into a Games Workshop or a local store and you're like, oh my gosh, what is all of this? And you were so excited. But that does wear off and you realize there's lots of other things on the horizon. And more than ever, we've got a million options for wargaming and RPGs and solo gaming and skirmish games and all of that. So, uh, happy hunting on finding out exactly what you enjoy, because you will slowly hone in on that. And you know what? There's no shame in just playing Warhammer your whole life. If you like Warhammer and maybe you don't need to invest much more in your army and you've got a decent gaming group, then keep playing Warhammer. I mean, don't let the haters of Games Workshop say that, oh, you can't continue to play Warhammer. But on the flip side, don't make the Games Workshop fanboys say that you can't try some other game and you can't be even happier with an independent game. So, there you have it from your old buddy Scott. Just find out what you enjoy and go do it. But realize that Warhammer, for many of us, is just a gateway. It's a stepping stone to finding out what we really like. And, you know, you don't ever have to quit Warhammer. You can keep Warhammer and then also experiment with other things. You can do that too. Anyway, thank you to my beautiful, sexy, good-smelling Patreon patrons for supporting the show. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you listed right there. Look at all of them. Look at that. Fraudfishy Hates Everything is very sexy. Anyway, and thank you for watching. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, blah, 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 blah. And that would help me out greatly. I will see you later.